Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jeff.
And we are your arena regulars.
We're talking all about MTG Arena,
where our skills are limited.
and our criticism is constructive.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 2. Jeff, what are we doing today?
Oh, we got a great show today, Zach.
Yeah, we do.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is what to do when you're new to Arena. How do you build up your account? What are the things you should focus on? Arena's got a lot going on. We're going to break some of that down for you. Then our historic staple list. So this is something I'm really excited about. If you want to get into historic, we're going to tell you what cards you shouldn't feel bad about crafting with wild cards. And finally, last week we talked about the bans. We predicted that the bans were great and that the metagame would be better. We're going to see if we were right.
Yeah, we'll see. But before we do that, Jeff, what are you drinking today? What's going on? What's over there?
I brought a beer called Dockside by Bob Cajun Brewing Company. Never had this before. This is a red ale. You inspired me last week by bringing an amber. I decided I like ambers. I'm going to bring a red ale this week.
Red ale, okay. I brought, this is from Four Fathers Brewing Company, which is in Ontario, Canada, and it's The Starter. It's a session IPA. It's very light with notes of citrus and fruit. It's a 4.8% IPA. It's a session. It's nice. I like that it's not too intense.
Week, so
you got 5?
Yeah.
Does that mean that you beat me?
Yeah, I think we're 1-1 now. I think you were taking it last week.
Well, I did bring an IPA, which I won't do most of the time, but the reason I brought it is because it is called The Starter, and we are talking about starting Arena today.
All right, well then you win on the reasons for bringing the beer.
That's what I was hoping. That's basically the only time
I'll get you next week on that front.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I don't know. But it tastes... it's nice.
Yeah, first sip's treating you well.
It's treating me pretty well. It tastes like an IPA with some citrus, I guess.
Yeah, I'll have to report back later. I'm not sure how I feel about this yet.
All right, sounds good. So this week, what have you been playing on Arena? Like, what have you been doing?
Yeah, so since our last episode, at the start I was playing a lot of Draft. I've been really enjoying Zendikar Draft, so I kept building up my collection with that. And then after a few days, I just started playing Standard. So I'm excited to brew some of the new decks we were talking about last week. Some we didn't get to talk about last week. It's just been a lot of fun. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, Standard has been great. I've been really enjoying that quite a bit. I think it's been super fun. I've been trying to find more decks and all these kind of things. I've been seeing a lot of new stuff, so we'll talk about that later. But Standard has really dominated everything I've been doing. I think I drafted once, and I was horrible because I've just been kind of out of touch with it just because Standard seems so fun. We do have some Magic news this week. Nothing too crazy, but we have a new secret layer. Bum, bum, bum. There's so many secret layers, it's hard to keep track sometimes. But this one is a little bit different. It's called Extra Life. They've been doing it for a couple years. I don't know how many actually, but it seems to be something that's been going on. But this secret layer is paired up with Seattle Children's Hospital. Seattle's Children's Hospital. So when you buy it, you give some money to that charity. It doesn't really affect us very much because, secret layers aren't in Arena.
Right. I only play Arena, Zach.
Yeah, I know. So we don't have to worry about it too much. But the only thing is you'll see there are sleeves you can buy. I think they're $5. It's like a little cartoon of Johnny that says Extra Life on it.
And do those also benefit the charity?
Yes, I believe they also benefit. They might... I don't know if they're 100% benefiting the charity or not. I know everything else that they're selling it's a portion. It's about half the money goes to the charity. So... I'm not exactly sure with the sleeves, but
if they do, I'll probably pick some.
Yeah, I'll probably pick some up if they're going to benefit the Children's Hospital. So, But to start us off with some first sips, we have our first topic, new to Arena.
Yeah, so when you first make an Arena account, you log in, you have to do this tutorial, and there's a lot going on. You have gold, you have gems, you have a ton of different play modes that you slowly unlock doing these color challenges. And you start with these 5 decks, right? One for each color.
Yep.
The decks they're not very good, but they do contain some cards that are playable.
Yeah.
Right? People do play them.
There's probably about one in each deck, and you can kind of find them. And when you play a little bit more, you'll start to see some of them come up. It's kind of like a shock or like a mana dork or a murder or things like that. But a big thing that's actually pretty important, if you're new to Magic, these challenges are just a good way for you to understand what the colors do.
Right.
And which ones you like. Because finding out what you like is pretty important when you're going to move on, because you need to figure out what your play style is.
Yeah, totally agree. And as we're going to talk about later, you need to know where to spend your wild cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do a pretty good job. They each have a well-defined theme.
Yeah. So we won't really get into the themes because they are what they are. You're going to play them that one time, and then after that, you won't really need to see them.
Don't take one of these decks into the ranked constructed queue.
No, yeah, you're going to big feel bad.
Yeah.
But after that, once you've completed all the color challenges, you do get unlocked a 2-color deck.
Right.
And these are the ones that are quite a bit more important, just because they actually have a lot more pieces of things that you're going to need, and they're going to be basically the foundation of your collection.
Exactly, yeah. And they do contain not just cards that are not embarrassing to play.
Yeah, but like actually good cards.
Right.
So there are 10 decks in total, one for each color pair. Each one has a mythic in it, a nice chunk of rares, and one temple of each of those colors.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the different dual lands later.
A little bit later. But it is nice that they immediately just give you one right off the bat. Not only that, but you also have all the common ones too that enter tapped, the lifelands, and you gain a life, which aren't great, and they will do. Like, you can use them, you can build a deck. They will be a land that you need. Being competitive with them, no one will play them because they just are too slow, and the life isn't worth it.
Yeah, the only situation I could imagine is if you had some life gain themed deck
that really needed to gain one life.
I still think you would play any of the other options.
Just because it's tapped, it's just it's so hard. If your land comes into play tapped, it needs to be good.
It needs to do more than gain one life.
Exactly.
Right. So I think you can unlock one of these decks per day.
Yes, once per day, and you unlock them by playing 25 cards of the previous 2-color combination deck that you unlocked.
Right. So if you start with the red-green deck, if you play 25 red or green cards,
you unlock the white-blue deck.
Right.
Which I actually liked. This was pretty fun. So I liked that they started with the red-green and then you go into the white-blue, because when I started playing Magic, it came in, I think I got 7th edition. It was like a box, and there were 2 decks, and there was a red-green deck and there's a white-blue deck.
Okay.
Right? And it was kind of similar the way that they did this, where you the tutorial is basically, it knows every card you're going to draw and it tells you what to do.
Right.
And so when you open the cards, they tell you not to shuffle them, and you draw your cards, and the little pamphlet you get tells you what to play after your opponent played whatever, to kind of get you to understand how the game works.
Oh, that's cool.
But it was really nostalgic to me to be like, oh, the first deck I played was red-green, because that was a big, it's stompy. You hit people with fire and like lava axes and stuff.
Right.
That was really exciting. So it was kind of nice to see that they kept a little bit of that and knew that red-green is a really fun, like, starter color or color pair.
Sure. As an aside, I would like to vote in 7th edition as my recommendation for ugliest cards of all time.
Really?
Yeah, the white border, and they did something weird with the art design in that set. A lot of what I think are the ugliest cards are all from 7th edition.
Wow, I completely disagree. I think everything should be white border. Why would you ever buy one? No, I do like when you just have a bunch of white and black border stuff.
Well, honestly, I used to play white border lands because when I fetched for them, you could find them right away.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, because then all your basics are white border.
Right.
And then that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And it might irritate your
opponent.
Yeah,
tilts the opponent.
So,
for sure.
Sometimes they...
Oh, none of the art was matching. No,
people get kind of frustrated about that sometimes.
You have to work hard to do that in Arena.
You have to work
collect
really
different
hard.
Art pieces.
It's really hard to count all the different lands you have, because there's like so many.
Okay, so those are the decks you start with. Now, what are the different ways to play? Right, so there's a ton of different ways to play Magic on Arena.
There are.
Could you walk me through a couple of them?
So you have just play, which is it's not ranked. You're basically playing against anyone. A lot of it is like the color challenge people once they get their final bosses on that play server. But you're either testing out decks, or like, you're not going to hurt your ranked score. And when you start out, don't worry about your rank score at all. It's really about having fun and like kind of building up gold and different things. So
Right.
that is going to be your best friend.
The incredible thing is that even if you're in Bronze League, which is the rank you would start at, you're still playing against a lot of people with fully powered decks.
Yeah.
Maybe they even took them from some big tournaments. So ranked is really something you get into after you've built up your collection.
You want to kind of wait on that for a bit. So you're going to be doing mostly is just the play portion. And then you can play best of 1 standard, best of 3 standard. There's best of 1 historic and best of 3 historic.
Now, what's historic? I've heard of standard before.
Yeah. So first standard is just the last 2 years of Magic cards.
Yeah, more or less.
More or less. It kind of varies depending on what time it is. But that's what standard is. So historic is every card on Arena just every card on Arena.
That's not banned. Yeah.
That's not banned. There is a banned list. But yeah, which includes the arena only cards,
Right.
which is something we will talk about in a little bit. But besides the constructed formats, you can also play limited.
Right. So you can draft. You can always draft, and there are basically 3 options. You can play best of 1. This tends to be the ranked format. They're called premium.
Well, there's 2 best of 1s, right? So there's quick draft.
Oh, but I was going to get to that.
Oh,
So-
sorry.
So premium draft is a ranked option. It's best of 1, and you're drafting against other players. And then there's best of 3. You're drafting against other players. It's an unranked option.
Yeah. Also, just for everyone, I wanted to say this. When we say best of 3, we're talking about traditional. When it says traditional,
Right. Anything that
what-
says traditional
that's what
means
best of 3 is.
that in order to win, you need to win 2 out of 3 potential games.
Yeah, which is what you would normally do if you're at a game shop or something. Best of 1 was kind of brought on by Arena.
Because of Arena, yeah. So that you could get a whole match in 7 minutes, And then there's best of 3, which is called traditional, and that's unranked. And then there's quick draft, which you're drafting against computers.
Yes.
So you're drafting against these bots that the creators of MTG Arena have designed. The advantage of that is you can take as long as you want with each pick. You can even stop partway through the draft and go do something else. And
I actually didn't know that.
yeah, you can. I
Oh,
did that
that's cool.
once. Yeah. And you can complete the draft later.
Interesting.
So that's the advantage of that.
Yeah. So I would say if you've never drafted before, first maybe look up just how to do it. It's not that complicated. Normally, if you're sitting down with friends, there's going to be 8 of you, and you have 3 packs of Magic cards there's 15 cards in each pack. You open a pack, you take one, you pass it to the left, and you keep doing that until all the cards are gone, and then you go to the right, and then you go back to the left. So you end up with a 45 card deck, or 45 cards that you turn into a 40 card deck.
Right. 40 plus.
41, yes.
No, Zach always plays 41
You play 41 cards so that you don't have to cut anything.
so that you don't mill out, right?
Yeah, so you don't mill out. You have an edge, just a 1 card edge, and that's all you need for mill. Not that Ruin Crab cares about 1 card; it's going to get 3 of them. But
Hey, it's not a multiple of 4 anymore, right?
yeah, exactly. I guess that's true. So it throws things off, maybe. I don't think that deeply into it. It's mainly that I don't want to cut 1 card, so I'm like, whatever, 41, that's fine. Ship it, let's go. Because cutting cards is hard.
It's really, when you start drafting, you'll realize that's the hardest part.
Cutting cards is the hardest thing. Even when you're playing constructed, you're like, how do I not play 4 copies of that? That gets pretty intense.
In the modern era of Magic, all the cards are so good that.
But basically, so those are the 3 draft formats. They cost different types of currency. So the 2 currencies that we have are gems and gold.
Right.
So gold is what they just give you every day when you're
it's your
completing quests.
Your free-to-play currency.
Free-to-play currency. So that's what we're going to be kind of looking at a little bit more. Because we made an Arena account recently.
Right. We started a new account so that we could be, up to date with what exactly you get.
Exactly. What exactly you get. See how great those cards are. They seemed a lot better than I remember when I had
you get some real
started.
cards.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, this feels. I mean, I was just like pleasantly surprised. Like, wow, this collection feels a lot better.
I agree.
Than I remember. So they do give you a good amount of stuff.
And I don't hate how much gold we had.
Yeah.
We already have in our account.
We have a good amount. I think we can definitely draft. We can quick draft with gold.
Right. Maybe not premium draft yet.
Not premium draft yet. So basically, the different prices are, it costs 5,000 gold to quick draft, and it costs 10,000 gold to premium draft.
Yeah, or traditional draft. Also 10,000.
Yes. And in gems, that's 750 gems for quick draft and 1,500 for premium.
So that's basically the different ways you can play on Arena.
That's basically
There's
it.
actually, you can also join these queues, right? Like I could join a standard event.
Yes, so they do have like
7.
Yeah, so they have like standard events and historic events. Usually they cost gems or gold, and then you get gold back in cards, either like individual rare cards.
Right, and you play as many
combos.
matches as it takes to lose 2 or win 5 or something.
Basically, yeah.
That's the general setup.
Yeah, and they do take a lot of. Sometimes they'll have like metagame breakdowns where they, you bring your best deck, and then they kind of use that. Those standings or basically what happens and which decks go higher and whatnot to kind of just get some statistics that they would like to balance the game a little bit more.
Sure.
But they also have just fun game things that just kind of happen. They have like F&M nights that are always different. And they also just have random things. There was like back in September, there was Yargle Day, where they were releasing the secret layer with Yargle and a bunch of arts of like Fatal Push and different things. So they had it was basically 2 days, but they called it Yargle Day.
Was that September 3rd by any chance?
It was September 3rd because Yargle's a 9/3.
Yeah.
And basically every deck had just a ridiculous amount of Yargles, and it cost a lot cheaper, and you just play Yargles. And they're just kind of just for fun. You can only win card styles essentially. So it costs gold or gems, and you win card styles. The most recent one was, they're calling it like a festival. So it's the Zendikar World Tour. So they kind of have like these postcard looking things.
Yeah.
And you can win in one of the Zendikar emotes, and then 3 card styles. They're all white. You get the card style for Felidar Prowler, Canyon Jerboa, and Felidar Retreat.
Well done on those card names.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remembered them. I tried.
Yeah, the landfall alternate arts look amazing. So
Absolutely. So I actually played it so that I could get those.
right.
It did cost some gold, but
I think it's something like 2,000 gold.
I think it was 2,500. Yeah.
And you get no gold back. So if
Yeah.
all you're worried about is building up your gold collection and you don't care about art, so if you don't care about cosmetics,
Yeah, basically.
it's not really the event for you.
Yeah, you're not going to get your money back. It's for people that have who are money bags like me, who just
Right.
like throwing it around a little bit, just trying to show off. So
Hey,
when
man, I have some of the sweet cosmetics as well.
I just want to play that Felidar Retreat, and people be like, "Whoa, okay."
We're trying to tell
Alright.
people how to actually free to play arena.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, so those are just up to your discretion. I would not recommend doing that if you're trying to free to play this game.
Yeah, if you just want to grind gold, I mean, you have to make the decision yourself if those cosmetics are worth the 2,000 gold for you.
Yeah, which to me,
Or 2,500, you said.
for me, it was more. I wanted to play the decks that they had. There were like 6 different decks, 5 of different color pairs, and then 1 colorless one, and I just had a blast.
Yeah,
I
it
thought they were
sounds
super
fun.
fun. They were all just so. It just reminds me of playing like Magic as a kid, where you just like buy 2 decks from the store. And you just like you don't look at them. You just shuffle them up and just play, and you figure out what the deck does as you're playing.
Right.
And you're like, oh, that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay,
so,
cool.
And so once you go through it, like you can only do it a couple times, but
Right.
I value that more than I think other people do.
Sure.
So that
So
was
for
really,
you, it's worth the 2,500
yes.
gold.
And then I just get a bonus of some other stuff. But being able to play decks that I didn't build is pretty fun, and just a random let's go. I do like that, especially if it's towards the end of the night and I've had
Yeah.
some other a few beers,
A couple of the starters.
yeah, just a couple starters, yeah, which is
Treating you well?
treating me well, yeah.
So do we have any tips for somebody? Let's say I just built my new arena account.
Yeah.
Now I know what the different formats are, how I can play. Do you have any tips for how I should build up my account?
Yeah, so I think my first tip is, it's not the exciting one, but basically if you're new to Arena, there's a $5 welcome bundle. It's 2,500 gems and 5 packs of cards of the most recent set. It is a really good value. It's definitely worth buying, and if that's the only money you spend on the game, that's the best you could ever do.
Yeah, then you spent $5 for the game. You could look at it that way, right? Yeah, that's the best bang for your buck in the entire store. You only get one chance to do it.
I've actually heard,
and it's only $5.
Yeah, and I've heard of people that just like restart. They just want to play draft, and they make new arena accounts just to do that because it's cheaper for them to pay that if they're not caring about anything else.
Yeah, because then $5 gets them 2 drafts, essentially.
Basically.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. So that is...
Or 5
fantastic.
quick drafts.
Yeah. So depending on how well you do in those, you could try to keep it going until you can't anymore and then start a new account.
Right. But if you're totally insistent on being free to play, I mean, you can grind up, and we'll give you some tips on how to build up your account as well. But we do highly recommend the $5 welcome.
Yeah, I really think it's
we both did it on our accounts.
Absolutely.
We're probably going to do it on the Arena Regulars account.
Yeah, we'll do it there. If I could do it again, I would.
Right.
It'd be great.
No regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets.
Yeah, so we have 5 or so tips. I don't know how many we have.
We wrote 5, but I think we have more than 5.
We wrote down, hey, let's do 5 tips, and we have a bunch of tips. So
yeah.
Whatever, take it what you can. I think the first one that you actually taught me was that you have daily quests.
Right.
So every day you get a new quest to do, I don't know, play a certain color of card or kill a creature or play lands or whatever. You can either get 500 gold or you can get 750 gold.
Right. Most of them will pay you 500 gold.
Yeah.
But some of them are 750.
And they're definitely worth getting because you're kind of, they take more cards or whatever. But if you're playing all the time, like it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, so the thing we should mention is that you're allowed to quote-unquote re-roll.
Yes.
So once per day, you can click a quest that you don't like and try to get a new quest. Mm-hmm. And what we're saying is that if the quest is ever 500 gold...
For whatever it is.
It doesn't matter what the actual goal is.
Yes.
You should re-roll it to try to get 750.
Always.
Because the difficulty is not completing the quests. No. If it says play 30 lands, you build a deck that's all lands, you just play and you just spend the whole game
and you just like
lands,
cultivate or whatever.
You get it done in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If it's play 25 red cards, you just build an all red deck.
Or you play the all red deck that they gave you already.
Right, because none of the quests are conditional on winning, so you can just build a deck that's designed to
do the task you want it to do.
Right.
If it's like kill 25 of their creatures, you just play mono black and you only have removal spells.
Right. So I feel like a lot of new players will they'll prefer quests that they think are easier for them to complete.
Or colors that they like.
They're
like, oh, this is my deck, so I'm going to keep this one. Always re-roll it.
No, you should always go for the 750 gold because that's a lot more gold than 500.
Yeah. And also, like, you can keep quests up to, basically, you can have 3 at a time.
Right. 3 days.
You can re-roll it one day, and if you don't have a lot of time, even if I have like a quest that's like halfway done, the next day, if I get a quest at 750, I'm going to re-roll the one I'm almost finished with and try to get 750.
Oh, yeah. I've had it, play 30 lands, and I've played 29. And I re-roll it because I want.
Because you might as well. I mean, we are playing a lot, so it's just gonna. We're also drafting, so you're playing a bunch of different colors and stuff. So,
but yeah, one of your early goals on a new account is to finish these quests. Mm-hmm. You should be able to finish any quest, so always push for the one that pays you out higher.
Pays the most.
Yeah.
Also, talking about free stuff that you just get, check the store.
Yes.
Every day for us, we're on the East Coast-ish, but the Eastern time zone.
We're in Eastern time zone.
And so for us, the store updates at 11 o'clock in the morning, but I believe on the Pacific it's 9 or something like that. Or is it 8?
I think it's 9.
I think they are 3 hours behind.
Oh, so then it would be 8.
So it would be 8.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway... it's basically everything is kind of clocked in Seattle because that's where Wizards is.
Right.
So if anything's talking about times, it's usually Seattle's the preferred one that they're talking about. So for us, it's 11. And I check the store every day just to see what it is. Most of the time, it's just card styles, sleeves. Sometimes it's like your avatar, pets, or whatever. But every once in a while, they will give away free stuff. So it'll be like... Today, the daily deal, that's what it's called, the daily deal. It'll be like you get 550 gold for 50 gold. So you pay 50 gold and get 550 back. So you just get free.
That's a sweet deal.
Yeah. So it's a really good reason to always keep at least some money in both of your gems and your gold, first of all. Don't ever go to 0 because you'll miss out on these kinds of things. But they also give out free gems as well, which is awesome.
I've seen that as well, yeah. 100 gems for 50 gold.
Yeah, and you're like, absolutely. If I can turn my gold into gems,
that's what you're trying to do.
That's what you're trying to do. That's great.
Yeah, so obviously Wizards does this to keep you going to the shop every day.
Yes.
But it works. You should go to the shop
You should go to the shop every day. Or you can just follow us on Twitter, and we will tell you whenever something is happening. So on Twitter, we're just at the Arena Regulars.
And anytime there's free gold, we'll let you know.
We'll tell you. So if you want to sit back, we'll do all the heavy lifting for you.
So I think that's a pretty good lead into one thing I wanted to talk about.
Let's do it.
Which is just general gold management.
Cool.
So when you're designing a free-to-play economy, like Wizards has had to do with MTG Arena, I won't go on the huge math tangent I was going to go on here. But basically, they never want you to know how much the free-to-play currency is worth. Mm-hmm. So different events, okay, so you said a draft is 1,500 gems or it's 10,000 gold.
Yes.
So that tells me that 1,000 gold gets me 150 gems, right?
Mm-hmm.
A different event will be priced differently so that I don't get an intuitive feeling for how much gems and gold the relative worth is.
Yes.
Which means that there are bad deals out there, right? Sometimes they just up the amount of gold you have to pay. So as a free-to-play player, you're getting screwed.
Yes.
So you kind of have to watch out for that. The biggest and most egregious one is that they ask you to spend 1,000 gold on a pack in the store. This is really tempting for new players, right?
Yes.
Because 1,000 gold is not that much, and packs are cool. But a pack is not worth very much on MTG Arena. You get a very small amount of progress towards a wild card, and one random rare that if you get a rare you don't like, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. It's basically saying that 6,000 gold is worth one wild card.
Right.
It's kind of what it is.
Right. And so we value what did we figure out? That a pack is worth pretty close to 27 gems.
About 27 gems. Once you complete a set, if you have all the rares and mythics of the set, even if you only have all the rares, because when you open packs on Arena, they're not going to give you a 5th copy of something. That's one great thing about being on Arena instead of in paper, is that you're not going to open the 5th copy of
right. This was a big problem a while ago, but they sorted it out. People were complaining about opening 5th copies of stuff.
Yeah. So basically, that isn't a problem. Once you have your play set of 4 copies, that's it. You're never going to have to open that card again. If you're just cracking packs or whatever is you get from whatever, I don't know, rewards or what you're getting. But if you've completed the entire set, they'll give you 20 gems.
For a rare. And 40 for a mythic.
Is it? I don't think I've ever got 40 gems
40
in
for
a pack.
Yeah, but the way that has to happen is you have to have 4 of every mythic in the set.
That's true. That's true. I don't think I've ever gotten to that point.
Yeah, but it is 40 for a mythic. And so we looked up the relative drop rates. Yeah. How often do you get a mythic in...
Well, Jeff did this. So if you don't know, Jeff is a math doctor. Yeah. And when I say, I mean, he actually has a PhD in math.
Yeah. Well, I get my diploma next month.
Okay.
I have, defended my thesis.
He did all the things he had to do. We can still call him a doctor. So listen to Jeff when he talks about math.
Yeah, but basically the short of it is based on the drop rates, how often a rare becomes a mythic rare, and the fact that a mythic rare will get you 40 gems instead of 20. A pack, and the fact that the commons and uncommons are worth very little.
Yes.
A pack is worth a little over 27 gems. So if you spend 1,000 gold on a pack, you're getting 27 gems worth out of your 1,000 gold. Whereas if you draft, remember that 10,000 gold gets you 1,500 gems. So 1,000 gold would get you 150 gems. So you're getting way more value out of your gold. So that's just a thing to be mindful of, is how much is my gold worth in gems, because gems is what you pay for. Gems is essentially a rescaling of money in MTG Arena, because it's the currency you pay for, and gold is what you have to work for. Exactly. And you should always be trying to convert your gold to gems. And so understanding the relative value of your gold in terms of gems is something that Arena doesn't want you to be able to do easily.
But we want you to do that easily.
Right. So don't spend 1,000 gold on a pack.
Don't do it. I mean, I've definitely done it before, so don't feel like horrible about yourself if you're like, I want to do it. But most of the time it's when I need just one more pack to get a rare wild card.
Right.
Because I am so low on rare wild cards that, like, sometimes you're trying to build something. You're like, I just really need one more copy of this thing.
Right.
Obviously do whatever you want to do. It's not going to be the best bang for your buck, but I also, I buy gems. So,
Yeah.
take it as you will. But if you want a free to play, I would say don't do that.
Right. So we have mentioned wildcards a lot, but I don't think we've ever talked about really what they are.
What's a wild card, Jeff?
Yeah. So a wild card is basically Arena's system for letting you actually get the cards you want.
It's fantastic.
So rather than just have, if I open a pack, I get a random rare.
Mm-hmm.
But every pack I open and basically everything I do gives me a little bit of progress towards a wild card.
Just packs you open, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if I play enough standard games, then
you can unlock packs to get.
Yeah, I get
stuff.
the rewards and
From the
I build my experience,
experience,
and then I get packs from the experience.
from your experience,
Right.
From the
So I would say actually wild cards are your most valuable commodity
absolutely,
because they let you play the deck you want to play.
It's also important because you cannot just buy wild cards. You can't just
exactly.
here's $10. I'm going to get 10 wild cards. You
Some
cannot
games
do
let
that.
you do that, but Arena does
not let you do that. You would have to buy gems and then convert gems into packs and then open those packs. And for every 6 packs, you get 1 wild card. And it's either it's
mostly a rare, sometimes a mythic rare.
and sometimes a mythic rare. And for me,
And you
it's
pick up uncommons along the way.
and the uncommons and commons you won't have a problem getting.
Yeah.
That's not going to be.
You're going to have way too many of those.
Yeah, and you're going to have not enough rares. And for me, I don't have any rares. I have tons of commons and commons, and I have mythics, but I just need rares. So that becomes something that's really important. So don't just blow them on anything. That is the precious jewel of the game. Keep those. Save them for important things that you want. Don't just throw them about.
And that's why I say it's the most valuable commodity, right?
Yes.
Even more so than gems, because we can't just trade our gems for wild cards, even
Yeah.
if we want to.
Even if we want to.
Yeah, so there's common, uncommon, rare, and mythic, and you basically exchange 1 wild card for 1 card of that rarity of your choosing.
Yeah.
And
So Teferi isn't going to cost me over whatever it costs in paper, $20-something.
right, all rares are basically
They're the
same
same price.
Now, that's offset by the fact that I can't sell my rares back to somebody.
True.
Once I craft them, it's in your collection forever.
But it's also in your collection forever.
Right.
So to me, that's awesome. I mean, I like collecting a lot of stuff. I have a really hard time selling my paper cards. In paper, I tend to just kind of collect things, and it's difficult for me to get rid of stuff.
I never sell them either, but the idea that I can sell them,
yes.
yeah.
The idea that you can sell them is a nice thing. I always know that if shop economy is completely different in paper,
Right.
obviously. So I just love the idea that if I have a mythic wild card, I can make that mythic. I can make it, whatever I want, which is great. I don't have to just break the bank to build some deck.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I've loved that as well.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons that, I got into brewing my own decks is that I would just refuse to spend $400 on a standard deck in paper.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
And so now that I can play those decks because it doesn't cost me anything different than my brew would cost.
Yeah.
I still don't do it, but
Exactly.
I could.
Yeah. And what's really great about having wild cards and not having to spend money on magic cards in paper is that I have more money to spend on beer.
That's right.
And with that, how's your beer doing?
I'm done.
You're done? All right. I think we're going to take a beer break. All right. Let's do it.
Let's crack a beer.
Crack it up. Yeah, so now I'm drinking this Bob Cajun Brewing Company, their Dockside Red Ale.
Yep, the one I had
5%.
before. Now I'm on the starter.
Yeah. Here we go. Cheers.
Air cheers.
Air cheers.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I see it. I like it. I like this duck. There's a picture of a duck and some trees on this.
Yeah.
I think the aesthetic is really nice of this can.
Yeah, you can check out our Instagram if you want to see what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's a nice can.
It's a nice can.
Actually why I bought it.
Yeah. I think it's nice. Anytime there's brown on a can, I'm more interested because there aren't a lot of beers that have brown on them. You know what I mean? Usually they're trying to be bright and flashy or crazy.
Like this one.
That one's not really bright and flashy. It kind of looks like an award. It looks like it got an award.
Yeah.
It's hey, this is the starter. That's it.
It's pretty bright.
It is bright. It's quite orange, but yeah.
So yeah, what were we talking about? Right. wild cards.
Wild cards. Yeah. So basically, once you craft a wild card, it's just there forever, right?
Yeah.
You just have that.
It's in your collection forever.
It's just in your collection.
So there's the obvious concern.
Yeah.
What if this card that I created forever gets banned? Because last week on the Arena Regulars episode 1, I heard there was a whole bunch of
There's
bans.
a ton of bannings.
Yeah.
Last week, there was a lot. But what's great is that once a card gets banned, you get a wild card version of every copy that you already owned.
Right.
So if you had 4 Omnaths, you got 4 mythic wild cards back.
But what if Omnath was banned in Standard and Historic, but what if something was only banned in Standard?
You still get the wild
I
card.
still get the wild cards.
You do.
But I could still play it in Historic?
Exactly.
And I still keep my copies.
Correct.
Oh, well, that's great.
So what we're proposing is that if there's a ban announcement coming up and you hear the murmurs of people saying, oh, this card's going to get banned. Watch out. Oh, it's too powerful. It's going to get banned in Standard. All this stuff.
Or if your favorite hosts on the Arena Regulars podcast tell you.
If we tell you it's going to get banned, what you should do is take your wild cards and craft 4 copies of the cards that are going to get banned.
Right.
And so when they get banned, you get 4 of those wild cards back, and you can play all the copies you have in Historic.
Right. Now, for example, with the most recent ban, Omnath got banned at both.
Yes.
So
that
tough
doesn't
luck.
really-
You just can't use
yeah.
your Omnath.
But
hey,
you
it was still free.
It's still free. You get 4 back, whatever. And what's also good is that for us here on the Eastern time zone, we can see the ban announcement before they show the ban in Arena.
So we can log in
there's
at
about
10 a.m.
yeah.
here.
Craft them that we already know that there's if they do the ban at that time, I guess.
I think probably they'll just do it all at 9 a.m. But
Yeah.
basically it gets leaked before they actually announce it.
Yeah,
every single time.
a lot of times that will happen, or a lot of streamers have speculations, or people on Twitter are just yelling about it. But basically, just kind of keep your finger on the pulse a little bit and just see what's going on, because you can benefit from those things.
Yeah, you just get your free, for example, when Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath was banned in Standard, you crafted all of them
You
right
told me to
before.
do it, and I was like, absolutely, I'm jumping on top of that.
And now you can play that card in Historic.
And now I have 4
and it costs
copies.
you nothing.
Yeah, that before I was hesitant because I was like, well, if it gets banned, I don't want to have 4 copies. So
now something that's worth mentioning,
Mm-hmm.
if I have my Uros,
Yes.
it got banned in Standard.
Yes.
Get my 4 wild cards back.
Mm-hmm.
If it now gets banned in Historic,
Mm-hmm.
they know that they already gave me 4 wild cards for the Standard banning. They won't give me 4 more.
They won't.
But if I didn't have it when it was banned in Standard and I've crafted it in the interim,
Mm-hmm.
they will give me the wild cards back. So they're keeping track of whether
They
they've
know.
already given you your wild cards
Exactly.
back or not. And so, of course, if it's banned in Standard and it's going to get banned in Historic, I don't know, maybe you craft them to play in Brawl or something. But
Yeah, but like,
it's still worth just having them in your account. You never
might
know.
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they're free. You have them. You might find a use for them at some point. We don't know what's going to happen in the future,
Yeah, you never know.
so you never know. Might as well just get. If
It's
you
free.
can get things for free, just get things for free.
Right.
Like, come on. But if I have like multiple versions of, let's say, like all those commons and uncommons, right? Normally I just put those in a box and I just like give them to a store or like some kid on the street or whatever.
Yeah.
What happens in Arena? Like, I have.
So Arena has a system in place, right?
Yeah.
So you already mentioned if you have 4 of a rare or 4 of a mythic rare,
Yeah.
you open that. So you're not going to open rares you already have. Once you have all the rares, you start to get gems.
Yes.
But what about the uncommons and commons? Because
Mhm.
you get those so fast.
Yeah.
Well, any card you already own, if you get it another time, whether that's in a pack or from a reward, whatever, it goes towards something called the vault.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that works is I don't know the exact numbers, but as you accumulate enough, eventually you get to 100% vault progress.
Yes.
You can click on the little flashing vault icon.
That has an arrow. It's like, it's there.
Right. And it gives you a mythic rare wildcard, 2 rare wildcards, and then I think 3 uncommon wildcards
Yeah.
for some reason. So you get basically from collecting enough uncommons and commons, you get rares and mythic rares.
Yes.
Now, the first tip I have for you is that this is just something I do, and to be totally honest, there's no sort of definitive advantage. I just kind of like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see the vault icon or your progress at all
'Cause
until you've completed it.
Because I have like no idea what's going on with my vaults. I just like know it's there. It's
Right.
kind of just like, it will tell me and I'll crack it when it's ready.
It's free, you'll get it.
Yeah.
I kind of like seeing where I'm at because then I
Oh.
can go and try to do stuff to get it to the 100%. So what I do is, for example, my vault right now is at 185%. I let it go past 100, and then that icon is always there, and then it'll tell me how close I am to 200 before I open it.
So you only
So
open it once it's past 200. So you
Right.
always have 100.
And then I
You can
always know exactly the percentage
Interesting.
I'm at. Of course, I'm giving up on the 2 rare wild cards and the 1 mythic that I kind of have sitting there. If I
Yeah,
ever need them,
That's true. You can.
I'll open them.
Yeah,
But I just really like knowing exactly what percentage I'm at.
that's really nice. I have a hard time with that.
It does take a little bit of self-control.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot of self-control, first of all, and it's not only just that I want the wild cards because those rare ones are so important to me at this stage, but it's also that there's something flashing every time I open Arena,
Right.
and I really have a hard time just having that there. It
Yeah.
feels like something's out of place, and I need to just get rid of
But
it.
as I said, you're not giving up any like mathematical advantage here.
Yes.
Right? I just kind of like knowing my vault progress.
Yeah, it's just kind of fun, and most of the time, I mean, for me, like when you're drafting. If you draft a rare that you already have 4 copies of, they will give you gems afterwards.
Right.
But all the commons and uncommons, they go straight to the vault.
Right
so,
to the vault. Yeah.
If you're drafting a lot, your vault will go up and up and up. Like that's what will really start to happen.
Drafting builds your account very quickly, especially if you're good at it and you can win your money back.
Yeah. So a lot of people will try to get basically 5 wins will get your money back in Premier.
4
draft.
wins is pretty close.
4 wins is pretty close. And so most of the time, if I've drafted and I get 4, I go 4 and 3, I'm happy.
Right.
You know, I basically spent 100 gems to get a bunch of cards and a good night.
And maybe even 40 gems back.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
and depending on how far I am in the set, I'll get those gems back.
Right. So, but the way the vault system works, it gives you actually a kind of sneaky way to use the uncommon and common wildcards. You're going to have hundreds of them eventually. So let's say a new set comes out.
Right. Like we just had Zendikar Rising come out, and you had, I don't know.
Oh, God, it's almost 300 uncommon wildcards.
That's insane.
Who knows how many
Insane.
commons. So what you do is you go in, and as soon as the set comes out, you craft all the commons and uncommons, 4 of them.
All of them.
Now, once I draft, every card I pick, essentially, that's not a rare, is going towards vault progress.
Just immediately.
So I was able to convert those uncommon and common wildcards into rare and mythic rare wildcards, albeit at a horrible rate. You know, like
very
hundreds of
bad.
wildcards
Yeah,
for
it's-
1 or 2
Exactly.
at a time. But it's still, I mean, the uncommon and common wildcards are useless. You have so many of them.
Yeah, if they're just sitting with you, if you have no for you, if you're starting your account, you will need them. That is not something you're going to want to do.
No,
if you get to the place where you have like 400 uncommon wildcards lying around,
Right.
and a new set comes out, do it.
But it won't even take you, you won't get 400 maybe right away, but you'll get to a point where it's not a consideration that you don't have enough common or uncommon
Yeah,
wildcards.
if you get to the point where you're like, it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Just you
and
can
that happens
totally do
pretty
that.
fast, and that's when, if a new set happens to be coming out, when you're hitting that point, this is the way to convert them into
Yes.
rares and
The
mythics.
one thing I will say is that if you're starting right now, you won't have any cards for historic.
Right.
Really. So most of those commons and uncommons, you will want to keep some around for historic builds.
You can spend them more judiciously.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're doing those kinds of things. But if you're focused on standard play, or I would, might as well craft as many as you can and then keep 50 or whatever,
Right.
or 25. Who knows? But that's just something to consider. It is a way to build your vault up very quickly when a new set
Yeah.
comes out.
So if you're a new player, that's something down the line. If you're someone sitting there right now with several hundred uncommon wildcards, this
Yeah.
is something to keep in mind for the next set.
If you're trying to figure out what to do with all these, that's exactly what you do.
Right. And so the last thing I kind of want to mention as our arena tips is, I've kind of mentioned it a few times, the idea of converting gold to gems. And there is actually a concrete way to do that, and that is drafting.
Okay.
Premier draft.
Yes.
Because the prizes in premium draft are gems.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of events pay you out in gold. If you get so many wins, you get this much gold. More wins is more gold.
Yeah.
But premium draft is something that you can actually enter with gold. And the prizes are all in gems. So as we sort of mentioned, 4 to 5 is the break point.
Yeah.
5 means you've made money, and 4 means you've lost a very small amount.
100, yeah.
Yeah. So if you can consistently get to 4 or 5 wins, what you're doing now is you're converting your 10,000 golds into 1,500 or so gems. If you go all the way, you get 2,200 gems and 6 packs. That's great for 10,000.
Yeah.
Golds.
Also, that's just bragging rights. That's where you take the screenshot of your deck. You send it to your buddy.
For sure.
Basically, Jeff sends me all of his 7-win decks, and I've sent him one because I'm not as good as he is.
That was exciting, though.
Yeah.
Well, we have a Discord channel
where we talk to each other a lot, so we have a bunch of different things. But whenever the deck list one pops up or drafts pops up, I know that he's sending me a 7 wins. I think you've probably sent me about 5.
I had a good little run
6,
there.
yeah, and I've sent him probably 1, and maybe a couple that weren't even 7 wins.
They
but
were
they were closer.
They were good decks.
They were good decks, and I was like, how did this not get whatever? Maybe I'm just not good at playing.
When I had the one with 3 ruined crabs, I knew you were really gonna hate it.
So
you
bad.
just love ruined crab.
Oh man, I pick ruined crab way too much and way too highly, and I know that now.
But I'm sure we'll talk about draft a little later. Specific strategies.
I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of stuff.
But that's why I really recommend. I mean, draft is really hard if you're a new player. There's no doubt about it. So we were saying get into the bot drafts, the quick drafts.
Yeah. So the quick drafts, basically what happens is when a new set comes out, you can play sealed. So sealed is different than draft. We hadn't talked about this, but it's only open for the first 2 weeks or so of a new set.
Right.
It costs 2,000 gems to play. But you get 6 packs when you enter, and you always get 3 packs at least back when even if you don't win anything, you still get 3 packs back. So it's a good way to get a lot of the new cards really quickly. Also, the format will go a little slower than draft, and well, I mean, I will always do it at the beginning of a draft because it's equivalent to like a pre-release in paper.
Yeah, I do it too, mostly because it's fun. I don't think the prize payout is quite as good as drafting.
I also agree. You do just get a lot of cards.
Yes.
You won't get as many gems, but you're going to get a ton of cards.
Yeah, so it is a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it's also a lot of fun, which I usually think that like fun is the most important thing, and
for
then
sure
everything.
That's our philosophy.
Yeah, right. Though it is good to mention the quick drafts. They will have like the new set quick drafts for a few weeks, and then they start to do old set quick drafts.
Yeah.
Which is a great way to build up your historic collection or your actually no, they don't do historic drafts. They just do old standard sets. So I think they're doing Eldraine. And
when a new historic sets comes out, you can do it, but yeah, it's a premium draft.
Yeah, but it's a premium draft. All the historic drafts are premium drafts. All the quick drafts will be older standard sets. So they'll kind of go through Eldraine and then Theros and Ikoria again.
And Eldraine's a good way to get all those busted Eldraine cards.
Actually, yeah, Eldraine's great. That's a great set, and also just a rare draft for that. Which there is nothing wrong with rare drafting, especially in Arena, because number one, if you're against bots, who cares? Right. Number two, like if you need it if you're playing to get cards or get wild cards for a constructed deck, and you see that card, take it. It can be really difficult to get those cards.
We're in a day and age where you're going to get enough playables.
Yeah.
And so the relative value of a card that's going to help your deck, I think this discussion has changed a lot over the years, because it used to be that you wouldn't get enough really good cards to make 23 for your standard deck, for your standard limited deck. And now that's not true. You usually have 27 or 28 cards. You have so many cards. As you mentioned, the hard part is cutting them. Yeah. So taking a rare that you need for constructed over a really good uncommon for your deck, I think the expected value of taking the rare is actually higher. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also just like anytime you see a set of like lands that you need, rare lands, right? Yeah. If it's not in your colors, just take it anyway. If you don't have 4 of them, you're going to play them at some point in a constructed format. Right. Take the pathways, take anything, like any of the rare lands, take the castles, the temples, like the triomes, do it.
And I think that's perfect segue right into our next segment.
Yeah, in our next segment, we're going into, we want to build a list of staples for historic.
Right. So you mentioned earlier, historic is basically every card on Arena.
Every card on Arena.
Yeah. Modulo a few ones that they decided were not fun for the format, so they banned or suspended them.
Yeah, you have some banned ones. But basically, I was trying to get into historic,
Right.
right? And I didn't know the best way. I was like, do I just look up a deck list? What? I have some of these like wild cards, and I don't know what I want to do with them. Maybe I want to like just get cards. Like recently, Amonkhet Remastered came out, right? And so I was drafting it a bunch, and I didn't know what cards I was looking for historic.
Right.
Because that set also had a bunch of random cards from other sets just to kind of get into historic. And it was I was just thinking, man, it would be so great if there was like a list of cards that are just, these are staples you will see in lots of different decks. If you're playing this color, you're probably going to have this card in your deck.
Right. Or at least it's not a mistake to have it in your deck.
Exactly. Yeah, you have some sort of reason not to. So what we've done is we're going to start a journey. It's not finished, and it probably never will be finished, and we'll kind of add cards or maybe subtract cards or do different things depending on what's going on. But we are making a historic staples list.
Right.
So this is kind of moving away from the you're beginning your arena account. This is for more seasoned players who are playing historic. Most people who have started their arena account are kind of playing standard and not really getting into a deeper format. But if you have a bigger card collection, historic's fantastic. I think it's really fun too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tournaments that play with it as well. I mean, obviously any of the ones that we've watched recently are playing historic or standard, but
yeah,
they're playing arena stuff. So
yeah. And so even if you are building your standard collection,
yeah,
maybe you're a little on the fence. Oh, should I craft this card for this deck I want? Well, if it's on our historic staples list,
might as well.
Yeah, you can craft it without feeling guilty because
Yeah.
you know this card is great. It's going to be used. You're going to be able to use it a lot in the future.
Yeah. So the first big thing with our list is lands.
Right.
Your mana base is so important in Constructed.
Don't play decks with bad mana.
Don't play decks with bad mana. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, you are going to have a bad time. You're going to yell at wizards
You're
because
gonna get
you think
frustrated.
that Magic is bad because of this thing. I mean, there is a big concept of people getting frustrated by mana screw. And
Right.
recently, the set, we have seen cards that specifically are working against this, like the double-faced modal cards or whatever you want to call them.
Great way to address the problem.
Yeah,
that way.
that's exactly what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to make it fun for everybody. You can play extra lands that also in the late game could be spells.
Right. Those cards are awesome.
They're fantastic.
They hit the right balance on them. They didn't make them too good.
I don't think any of them are super busted. They're really nice. But when we're just talking about, like, get your mana base, like, no one ever wants to play a game where you don't have enough lands or you have too many lands,
Right.
or you don't have the right colors, right? That's a really big thing. Or it comes into play tapped and you needed it that turn, right?
Yeah. It's huge.
So wasting a turn by playing a tap land or things like that, it can really be detrimental.
And we just spent however much time telling you how wild cards are so important. And I know it feels bad to use a wild card.
It feels really bad.
It's not fun.
It's not fun.
But the fun comes later.
If you can shift your priorities, knowing that, like, I'm investing into this format or I'm investing into this game, I know that I'm going to need these. And a really good way to do that is to decide what your favorite colors are. Mm-hmm. If you have a favorite color pair and you know that any new set...
Black, green.
Sure. I know you like playing Golgari.
It's the best one.
No, it's... whatever. It's your favorite, that's fine. Yes, it's you. Okay.
I'm recruiting zombies.
Recruiting zombies. I mean, I like black blue, but anyway, if you know what your favorite colors are or your favorite color and a couple pairs, you can always focus on those cards and those lands specifically, knowing that, like, if I'm playing standard, like, a lot of people are playing rogues, right?
Yeah.
If you're playing Dimir rogues, you need the pathways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need the triomes, the Sultai triome. Like, well, I guess maybe you don't need it, but, like, you are going to be working on that color pair. So get all the lands of those color pairs first, maybe. Maybe you're going to play historic deck and you're looking for only Dimir cards, right? You're going to make a Dimir deck. Just do that.
Or even Sultai, as you mentioned, right?
Sultai.
You need the triomes. You need each of the two color pairs
Right.
that go into Sultai.
And Sultai is great in historic as well. So
Trust me, if you spend the time building up your mana base, then you can start brewing any deck you want. You just throw in the lands you need. You don't have to worry about being stumbling on mana.
you're never going to have to later think, oh man, I just got 4 copies of this awesome bomb. And you look at your mana base and you're like, crap, it's like double black. It's going to be really hard to play this card because I don't have the right stuff.
Right.
Like, if you have the foundation, it'll just be so much.
And this is why Zach keeps saying he has no rare wild cards.
Because I spent all my rare wild cards on all of these lands.
Yeah, we
Because
can't stress it enough.
I went so hard. Every time I got a new one, I would immediately, like, I would make sure I had 0 rare wild cards, so I wouldn't have a lapse of mental certainty, right? I would accidentally
Use
craft
it on,
something
yeah.
I didn't need. I would always make sure, like, okay, now I'm going to finish this set of these lands or whatever.
Because lands never go out of style. You're always going to need them.
They're always good. It's really hard to get worked into you because it always feels bad.
Right. It's just not the fun way to
It's
spend
not
your
fun,
wild
right?
card.
The more you've played, the more you see how important these things are. I remember when I was a kid, rare lands were the worst thing you could possibly get in a pack.
Oh, no, I opened a polluted delta.
Damn it. You know, like, that's the worst. Like, it felt horrible. Like, I have to pay a life and it doesn't even tap for mana.
Yeah,
like,
this card sucks.
And I get just a regular swamp, but that's dumb. Like, it was... I understand that feeling. Oh, this land, like, comes into play tapped, or I have to deal 2 damage to myself so it doesn't. Like, I totally get how that feels, but they're so important.
Maybe a good way to put it is you're going to craft these lands eventually anyway.
Yes, you will.
We promise you will craft them.
When you play longer or anything, you are going to know that your mana base is so important. So just do it now. You're going to be thanking us forever and ever after this, because once you do it, you don't have to do it again.
Right. And so there's a ton of different types of lands.
Yes, there are.
So we'll use the kind of colloquial terms for them.
First, we'll explain what they are, of course.
Right.
But yeah.
So the ones that are in standard right now
Yes.
are called pathways, for
pathways.
the obvious reason that every card has pathway in its name.
Yeah, it's something pathway.
Yeah. And these are the ones where one side is basically a land that taps for one color, and the other side is a land that taps for a different color, and you choose when you play it which side you're getting.
So basically in your hand, you just have to figure out what color you need. So a lot of the play pattern is just like waiting until the last land you have to play is that one. You get to decide what you're missing.
These lands are very good.
They are.
But, of course, you have to choose when you play it. So it doesn't tap for blue or white every turn. It taps for...
whatever you chose.
Yeah.
At the time.
Blue-white's maybe a bad example because I don't think there is a blue-white pathway. But blue-black.
Yeah, blue-black.
Yeah. I either play it essentially as an island or essentially as a swamp.
Yes.
It doesn't have that basic land subtype. That's why I say essentially. But, okay, it taps for either blue or black, and I choose that when I play it.
Exactly.
They're very good, but these lands are not good for decks that want to play double blue and double black, for example.
Yes.
Because
or
I have
triple black. Yeah.
Right. Imagine I have a historic deck that's blue-black control, and I want to be able to play Narset 1 blue-blue on turn 3, and then I want to be able to play something that costs 2 black mana on turn 4.
Which a big one is like there's these lands that are like 3 pips of whatever color they are, and then they come into play, or they're lands, right? So Agadeem's Awakening is the black
I
one.
want to be able to do Agadeem's Awakening.
There's 3 black in it, so you have to think about these things that are in your deck,
right?
And it can be kind of hard depending on what your hand is or all that kind of stuff.
Or you just have to make a tough choice, right?
Yeah.
Which card am I going to play?
You're like, well, I have a double blue card in my hand. I'll play the blue side. Then you get 2 more islands, and you're like, okay, well.
On the other hand, if everything in your deck only has 1 pip of its color, these are probably the best lands.
Yeah.
In the entire game.
They fix you, and you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
You feel bads.
So I highly recommend crafting pathways as soon as possible, because they're in standard right now, and they are very powerful lands. But you should understand their weakness, that if I want to play, when the blue-white pathway does come out, if I want to play a blue-white control deck that is trying to play Narset 1 blue-blue into Wrath of God 2 white-white, and a lot of time you want your Narset to find your Wrath of God, that's why you play it, the pathways are not good for that.
Yes.
But those are the ones that are in standard. The other ones in standard are temples.
Yes, temples. So you get one of those with each of your starter decks already.
Right.
But they are the ones they enter tapped, and they tap for one of the 2 colors that it taps for, and it also scries when it enters the battlefield.
Right. Now, it should be noted that entering tapped is a huge downside.
It's very.
That's why they scry 1, right? Because it's a big downside, and they're trying to mitigate that a little bit. So what kind of decks would play temples? Well, not anything aggressive.
Yeah.
If you have 1 drops and 2 drops, cards that cost 1 mana or cards that cost 2 mana, a lot of them in your deck, the temples are really going to slow you down.
Yeah.
Because you'll be playing your card that costs 1 mana on turn 2, your card that costs 2 mana on turn 3.
Yeah, or you have to decide, I'm going to play my 1-drop, skip my 2-drop, and play my 3-drop. Like that,
Yeah.
you really need to curve out in those decks, so it's really difficult to mitigate that.
Right. On the other hand, decks that don't have any cards that cost 1 mana, well, now the temple gives them a way to make use of their first turn. If they were to just play an island and then pass the turn and then not use that mana, they've just wasted 1 mana in the game.
Yes.
If they play a temple, it gives them some freedom to cast spells in the future because it gives them 2 colors, and it gave them a little bit of extra value in the scry. So if you weren't going to use that mana anyways, these are the kind of decks that would want to play temples. You don't particularly plan on coming out of the gates fast.
Yes.
And you want a way to use turn 1 and turn 2 to actually generate advantage.
Yes.
Instead of just wasting it. And then the last one is the triomes are still in standard.
Yeah.
So these are 3-color lands, which is very powerful already. Unfortunately, they do enter the battlefield tapped.
Always.
This is a huge downside, as we mentioned before, but the mitigation here is that they have cycling.
They have cycling, and they're also the land type of the 3 different lands.
Right. So we should mention that pathways and temples are not.
They don't have land types.
For example, the blue-red temple or pathway are not islands or mountains.
Yes.
Whereas the blue-red-white triome is an island, a mountain, and a plains.
Exactly. And it cycles for 3 mana.
Right.
3 generic mana. If you get it late in the game, you can cycle it away, get a new card.
Right. So who wants to play pathways? The answer is kind of obvious: 3-color decks, because it's just so
Or
powerful.
triomes, you mean?
Who wants to play triomes?
3-color decks.
3-color decks want to play triomes because, well, it's a land that taps for all 3 colors.
Exactly.
And if you have too many lands in the late game, you get rid of it and
Boom.
you draw a new card. Moving on to historic, what are the big lands there?
So there's 2 really big ones.
Right.
The most important, absolutely, these are the ones that we're focusing on, like historic list. Craft these your shock lands.
Right.
These are the lands that have come in the Ravnica sets 3 times. This is the land that it enters the battlefield tapped, or you can have it deal 2 damage to you and it enters untapped.
Right. So they're called shock lands because shock
Deals
is
2
a
damage.
spell that deals 2 damage.
Also very important, they do have the land types as well. So if you play the Azorius one, you get a plains and an island. It's great for really aggressive decks because you can, most of the time, those decks don't really care about their life as much. They're just trying to go as fast as possible. You have a dual land that enters untapped, and you can go the way you want to go.
Right.
With them, you also have check lands. So a check land is something that when it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped unless you have a land that is a certain land type. This is why we've been talking about the land types.
Right.
So check lands, if you have the white-blue one, it enters tapped unless you control a plains or an island.
Right. But as we mentioned, the triomes and also the shock lands have those types, so they actually allow your check lands to come in to
Which
play on.
means that the shocks, the checks, and the triomes are pretty great when you're trying to build
Right.
a mana base in historic.
It is a big advantage to have that.
It is very big.
Basic land type.
The importance of that is huge. But the advantage that you get is so huge that it really is something that like you should strive towards.
Right.
And like having the lands that you need for those 2-color decks, especially aggressive ones, like shocks, you need them. In historic, you need shocks. Like people are playing shocks, you have to play shocks.
Yeah. So I think that starts out our historic list.
I think that's
Historic staples are the shock lands.
shock lands.
So we won't go through all the names.
Yeah,
But
but
if it's from the Ravnica cycle, the blue-white one that we've been talking about is Hallowed Fountain.
yes.
Enters the battlefield tapped unless you pay 2 life. These are the most versatile lands. They're good in every deck.
Yes.
Every deck of those colors, these lands are good.
Yeah.
Right. Then there's a bit of a debate, but whether pathways are going to be better than check lands. I think my inclination is that pathways are more powerful, but I like to play decks with complicated mana costs, and so I would lean towards check lands because then I can put triomes, shock lands, basic lands, all this stuff into my deck and ensure that my check lands are pretty good.
Exactly.
The tension here is that pathways do not have a basic land type, as we mentioned. So if you put pathways and check lands into your deck, sometimes your check lands will enter the battlefield tapped because you had a pathway.
Yes.
And that's what makes things difficult.
A little difficult. So it's almost like check lands or pathways. You kind of have to decide.
Right.
As of right now.
And the shoe-ins, though, are shock lands. You always want those.
Yeah. So on our list, we were saying all 10 shock lands, 4 ofs, all of them. Pick your favorite color pairing.
And there's actually one more land that we haven't
That's true, yeah.
yet.
There is one other land, but I will say shocks are 100% on our list. Craft your color pair. Just at least get the 4 of your favorite colors.
Right.
But would you like to talk about the last land we're going to talk about?
Yeah, the last land is called Fabled Passage. Okay. And this land is, you can sacrifice it to go get a basic land from your deck.
Yes.
And that basic land will enter the battlefield tapped unless you have at least 4 lands. So if it's your 4th land coming into play, it enters untapped. This land is really, really good, and you want it in your collection.
And you just need 4, and it will go in so many decks.
Right. Any deck that plays 2 colors will probably play 1 or 2 of these, and any deck that plays more than 2 colors will play the full 4, probably.
4, yes.
Yeah. So, I'm tempted to add this to the historic staples.
I definitely think we should add it to the historic staples, because Fabled Passage is just like Evolving Wilds, but better.
Yeah, and not to mention there's more upside on top of that. Putting a card in your graveyard, triggering landfall twice.
All those kinds of things. Yeah. Very, very important.
This card is really good.
It's very good. There are also other lands. I mean, there's the castles. Those are only 1 color, so we're not really talking about them right now. And then there's also...
they're really good, though.
They're really good, though?
And it's another reason to care about basic land types.
Exactly. Or we have the cycling lands that they came from Amonkhet, which are very similar to the Triomes. They cycle for 2 instead of 3, and they're only 2 colors. They're also very good in historic. But I really think that your best bang for your buck are you're getting your shocks and you're getting your Fabled Passages.
Yep.
Really, all I'm asking for you is just 4 Fabled Passages and 4 of your favorite shocks. Boom.
Okay, so we've done our bit on lands.
That's what we're talking about, lands. But before we keep going, I think I'm going to need another beer.
Okay.
I
need one too.
All right, perfect. All right, let's get a beer break. So, Jeff, which beer did you pick there?
I decided to go for the starter.
The starter?
Yeah.
Oh, and who brought that one?
You brought it.
I did bring it.
I preferred your beer. How about you?
Wow.
Which one did you go for?
I went for the Bob Cajun.
Dockside.
Yeah, I brought the one that
we took each other's beers.
We took each other.
Yeah.
We took each other's beers.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that sounds very off, but not that off. It's exactly what happened. Yeah, I just think red ales are just...
I do love a good red ale.
How do you feel about this red ale? Like, what are you going to give it? What tier?
So I have to admit, I found it underwhelming.
Okay.
I love red ales. Maybe my expectation just super high.
It might be super high.
I got to go gold on this, honestly.
Wow.
I just didn't love it.
Gold.
Yeah.
Interesting. You brought a gold beer to our podcast. I'm just baffled by this. I think it's close. I would say low platinum, so probably close to gold. Right. It is good. I do like it. I think the can pushes it a bit for me.
Yeah. Big fan of the aesthetic.
Yeah, the aesthetic. They did a good job. There's a little duck on it. It's kind of cute. But the taste is it's there. It's just not. I don't know. It's missing something, and I don't know what it is.
Right. That's how I felt as well.
It's just leaving me a little lacking. But I do like it. I would probably, if I have it, I'll drink it. I mean, but that's true with like any beer, to be fair. So I don't know what to say about that. How about the starter? Where are you going to put that?
This one's a solid platinum for me. Just a session IPA. It's really enjoyable.
Nice. I will put it on higher platinum.
Okay.
Because,
like Plat 1.
Probably Plat 1. No, I'll say Plat 2.
Okay.
Oh, this is hard. Because I do like it. I actually think it's a selling point that it has less alcohol than most IPAs.
Sure.
because you can play longer drinking this. Like this is like you can drink this in platinum all day, try to get to diamond, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. You can have a longer session. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. You can have a longer arena session, or it can be the starter of your session.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, but yeah, I definitely think that is, for IPAs at least, I think it's pretty nice. I really like that it doesn't leave me so dry that some IPAs really just rip
Right.
onto my tongue, kind of like the hops really get me. So I like it.
Couldn't help but notice that you ranked this beer higher than that one, and yet you chose that one.
Yeah, I chose this one just because like it felt right tonight, you know?
Just goes to show how much you love a good red ale.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I'm going to say this is probably, it's hard because I'm going to say they're both platinum. I might say that one's a little bit higher than this one, but like tonight I felt like this red ale, and yeah, that's the way it is.
Perfect.
But anyway, back to what we were talking about. What were we talking about?
Historic tier list.
Historic staples.
list.
There we go.
Right.
Historic staples.
So now that we're done berating them about crafting lands,
Yeah.
hopefully you got the message. But if you
Lands are
didn't,
important.
Craft lands.
Craft lands. Get the lands.
So we decided to pick one card from each color
Yes.
that really is just a jack of all trades. If you're playing this color, there's a good chance you're going to want this card in your historic
Exactly.
deck. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to start off. I think this list, I don't really know what it's going to be like in the future. Right now, it has Shocks on it and Fabled Passage and one card of each color.
Right.
That's where we're starting. We'll see where it goes.
We'll add multicolor cards, don't worry.
Well, I mean,
I'm
we'll
sure
see what
Uro
happens.
will make his way onto this list. We're just not super confident he won't get banned.
We will see what happens. But what is, Jeff, what's the first one?
All right, so we're going to go in Wooburg order. That's white, blue, black, red, green.
Mm-hmm.
White, the card we chose is Wrath of God.
Wrath of God.
This is an absolute Magic classic.
Absolute classic.
It's hard not to choose this one. It came in Amonkhet Remastered.
Yes.
What is Wrath of God? What's it do?
So Wrath of God.
Oh, man.
It's just like
That's a
giant
silver-bordered
fish.
card if I've ever seen one.
There's just like this big fish just like destroying.
Or is it like a lot of fish? You know how that happens sometimes when there's a storm? All
like
the fish get...
are in like a hurricane.
If you ever seen Fargo, that happens. Spoiler alert. And they get attacked.
Sorry.
by
Wrath of
fish.
God. I think that's my favorite thing. Wrath of God. It is 2 and white for a sorcery that reads, destroy all creatures, they cannot be regenerated.
Oh.
If you used to play when there was regeneration.
Yeah. Bury all creatures.
Bury all creatures is actually what it used to say.
Yeah, so regeneration isn't really relevant in Arena.
Yes, but destroying all creatures for 4 mana.
Right, with no conditions.
No conditions.
Yeah, nothing else. No hoops you got to jump through here.
They don't get cards, they don't get lands, nothing.
Now, obviously, this doesn't go in every white deck. If you want to build a white aggressive deck, then you're not going to want this card if your whole deck is creatures. But this is just kind of the classic de facto white card. Anytime you're playing a deck that includes white, that is not aggressive, this card's going right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a control staple. You're going to see it a lot also. So it's not only a card that you should have, but you should expect
you should have
see it
on the mind. You should have it in your collection and on your mind.
Yes. Very relevant. Will always be relevant, and I'm really happy that Amonkhet did this, where they brought cards from other sets that weren't from Amonkhet.
Yeah.
It made the drafting experience crazy because you're like trying to play.
Oh, it had a lot of
around cards that like I had Hornet Queen and I got Wrath of God. I'm like, what is happening? These are not Amonkhet cards. Like, what's going on? So that was great. I really like what they did with that. I'm excited for the next thing that's going to happen with Kaladesh Remastered, which is coming out before the end of this year or something. I don't really know.
Not sure.
But anyway, that is definitely a white card that you should have 4 copies of.
It's in fact so quintessential that cards that destroy all creatures or deal damage to all creatures are called Wraths.
That is
named after this card.
This card is the reason they're called Wraths.
So if you ever wondered why is it called a Wrath, it's because this card, Wrath of God, was the first one.
And when people say sweepers, they're wrong. It's called Wraths.
It's called a Wrath. Obviously.
But the next one, our blue staple for the list. I'm going to read it. I have it right in front of me just because it's got a few words on it.
It really only has the cycling part, but you can read the whole thing.
I'm going to read the whole thing just so everyone knows what it is. It is a recent card, actually. Shark Typhoon. It is 5 and a blue for an enchantment. It says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. However, the really important part of this card is it has cycling for X, 1, and a blue. And when you cycle Shark Typhoon, you create an XX blue shark creature token with flying.
Right.
Great thing. You can just cycle it at instant speed, make a blocker. That's usually what happens.
You should think of this as an instant speed flying shark that draws you a card when it comes into play. Really, really good. You're always tempted to play it for its enchantment side. It's usually wrong. Don't do it.
Usually not going to happen because most of the time when you play the enchantment side, it's the only thing you do for that turn, and it's not going to affect the board. And then if
almost always better to cycle.
It's almost always better just to have an actual creature on the board when they didn't know it was going to happen is huge.
Yeah. But hey, this card is great. It goes into control decks, goes into mid-range decks, and even some aggressively slanted blue decks will put this in their sideboard.
Absolutely.
To help fight the control decks because it's a creature at instant speed.
Yeah.
This card's just amazing, and you're going to want to have this card in your collection, so you should not feel bad about crafting it.
Yeah. Also, it's, kind of made after the Sharknado movies.
Yes.
So there's also that plus of having a freaking sweet, movie in your deck.
Is the movie frickin' sweet?
I'm gonna say frickin' sweet. I mean, that's the movie where I will only watch it after like a case of beer. Right?
Yeah, well.
That's when it's gonna be really frickin' sweet, right?
Yeah.
Right? Whatever.
All right, so black.
We're just gonna jump right to the next one because we don't want to talk about this anymore.
So our black card of choice, and there really wasn't any choice here. I think this is the first one we both decided
on. This is the easiest one by far.
The card is Thoughtseize.
Thoughtseize.
This is probably the best card in Historic.
It's so good.
It's 1 black mana for a sorcery. It says you look at target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. You lose 2 life.
Yep.
The 2 life is just worth this effect.
Mm-hmm.
You can really disrupt, poke a hole in your opponent's game plan. You get to know what cards they have for the foreseeable future. This card is just amazing. It's one of the defining cards of the format, and you should never feel bad about crafting this.
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons you actually want to play black, and if you try to put black in your deck so you can play Thoughtseize.
Exactly, yeah. The Sultai deck, which is one of the best decks in the format, is basically blue-green for all the awesome blue-green cards, and then we play black for Thoughtseize.
Yeah. Like, that's it. Have 4 of them. You're never going to feel bad. Well, the only time you're going to feel bad about playing this card is when you're at 2 life. That's basically it. Even when you're at 3, you're like, maybe I'll get rid of their combo piece. Like,
it should be mentioned it's not a great top deck in the late game usually, but how good it is on turn 1 is
in your starting hand.
Upsize.
Or 1, 2, and 3. If you just Thoughtseize, like they're going to be like Scoop. Like that's the power that it has.
One thing I should mention about this card though is there's basically a 100% chance that whatever card you make them discard, they're going to draw it next turn. That's been my experience anyways. Yeah. So I choose this card. I think they can't possibly win without it, and then they untap and play it. So.
Also, I want to say in my opinion, this is out of context of everything, but if you're getting Thoughtseized, if someone Thoughtseizes you, or even just hand disruptions you in general, this is my idea. If someone picks the card that you were going to play next turn, I give them a nice. Just like, nice.
Oh, okay.
Like
that's some arena regulars etiquette.
That's a little etiquette for you, just to tell them,
I was planning on playing that.
You're right. That was the correct choice.
Yeah.
If you were, like, if someone was playing Thoughtseize on you, or you Thoughtseize them, you're like, oh, wow, okay, this hand is way more busted than I thought. What card do I pick? If they pick the correct card, give them a nice. Just be like, yeah.
You know, we should do an episode on arena etiquette.
We should. Yeah. Sometime we'll do etiquette. I mean, like, it's getting more complicated now that there's all these
so many new
emotes that are like.
There's stickers coming, right?
I've been just slamming the like finger sticker all over the place. I just got it and I'm so excited. I'm doing it all the time, and people keep giving me the kissy face one back.
All right, we'll come back in the near future.
yeah.
We'll have a segment on
We'll
arena.
probably talk
etiquette.
about that, but I
Basically,
will
don't
say,
do what Zach's doing.
yeah, basically, I think it is nice to just give somebody a little heads up. Hey, nice. I mean, that can be interpreted many different ways, but I think starting it off as you did a good job is the best starting spot.
Right. So red was interesting because there's, for example, one of the best red cards is Muxus, Goblin Grandee.
Yes.
But this really doesn't deserve a spot on our historic staples list because it goes in just one deck.
One deck. You build one deck around that card, and that's it.
And so if you craft this, and then it turns out Goblins, so if Goblins is the deck, if Goblins isn't good, you're going to be upset that you crafted this.
Exactly.
So its power level kind of ebbs and flows with the success of that deck. We got to go with the just multi-format all-star here. Absolute red staple.
So good.
Bone Crusher Giant.
Bone Crusher Giant.
Yeah. This card, basically, if you have red mana in your deck, you have to try to convince yourself not to play this card.
Yeah. Also, if you listened to us before, this is the card that was in most of the decks in the grand finals.
Only Seth didn't play it.
It's every deck that played red played this card.
Right.
Obviously, you have to play this card. It's also great in standard, but it's great in historic. It's a really good card. It's very versatile.
There's no reason not to craft this
There's
bad boy.
no reason to have not, like, if you're not playing it and you're like, oh, well, I mean, I have one, I'm not going to play more. It's like, you should have 4.
Yeah, you need 4. And the lucky thing is, 1 comes with your arena account.
Exactly. So you already have 1. Also, to note, Shark Typhoon, you also have 1.
You should start with one of those as well.
So that's just fantastic. Jeff, do you want to read this card, or should I read this card?
Go for it.
I got it. Okay, so Bone Crusher Giant, it's 2 and a red for a 4/3 giant creature. It also has an adventure called Stomp, which is very important. Stomp is 1 and a red for an instant. It says damage can't be prevented this turn. That's not important. It says Stomp deals 2 damage to any target. Yeah. Does it come up?
Yeah, I've had it come up.
Okay, I haven't seen it come up.
Because some things have protection. If you stomp their face, protection is off.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you attack with everything, stomp their face, and the thing with protection from red dies. Because protection prevents damage. Yeah.
Ooh.
It's good.
Wow, that's really good. Wow, that's really
Card just
good.
got even better.
Yeah, holy crap. Sorry, let me reread this card. Stomp, 1 and a red, instant. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Very relevant. Stomp deals 2 damage to any target. So it kind of shocks anything. And then it's in its adventure land. You can play it for 2 and a red. And then it's a 4/3 on the battlefield. Whenever Bone Crusher Giant becomes the target of a spell, Bone Crusher deals 2 damage to target spells controller.
Just because, a 4/3 that could shock something and do the extra ability wasn't enough if it didn't also have to shock you whenever you tried to target it.
Very important. It will shock you if you try to target it as well.
Yeah, if you try to put an aura on it or something.
Most notably, mutate creatures will shock you. Also, Primal Might will also shock you. Yep. So it is relevant that the 2 damage will hurt you. But it also hurts your opponent. Most of the time, people aren't going to do single target removal for a Bone Crusher.
This card's an all-star.
It's so good. Have 4 of them. I recently crafted 4 of them. I didn't even have a deck for it yet, and I just crafted all 4. And now I'm using them constantly. So it's a great card.
And finally, that brings us to green. And the card we chose for green was Collected Company.
Absolutely.
This card is just very, very good. You spend 4 mana at instant speed to get up to 6 mana worth of creatures. You're just cheating on mana. You're playing creatures at instant speed that aren't meant to be played at instant speed.
Yeah.
It has a deck building cost that you basically want, I don't know, somewhere in the realm of 26 creatures that cost 3 or less. Yeah. Probably even more than that.
But that's not even a bad thing. There's a lot of really good cards that cost 3.
The payoff is worth it, even if there's not a deck right now. I think Gen Sacrifice is a very good deck, and it often plays Collected Company.
It really does, or should, I think. Yeah, also you can get a new secret layer with it. Collected Company's in that secret layer.
There you go.
It's a great card. It's good in everything on Arena.
Anything that plays creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the card.
In green.
I mean, I've even seen, if I wanted to build blue-white spirits, for example, because there are a lot of really good blue-white spirits.
Yeah, add green.
I would splash green just for Collected Company.
Especially because spirits are going to be low-costed creatures, right? So that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, with the Skyclave apparition that came out in Zendikar
before we
Rising.
keep talking about it, do we want to read this card?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. It is a collected company. It's 3 and a green for an instant. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. Put up to 2 creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order.
Amazing card.
Amazing. Instant speed. Play 2 creatures that you find from 6.
Right.
That's so good.
Yeah. I mean, I've missed with it before, but the actual math on you missing, if you put 26 plus 3 creatures that cost 3 or less in your deck, you should almost never miss.
Yeah, if you're thinking of it like, okay, so I spent 4 mana, even if you whiff, like the best case scenario, obviously, 4 mana, you get 2 3/3s that you're up 2 mana.
2 3 drops, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean, sorry. Yeah. 2 3 drops, you're up 2 mana. That's great.
And fantastic. Got to play them at instant speed on your opponent's end step. Maybe your opponent listened to this podcast, played Wrath of God, and then you waited that out and then put 2 new creatures onto the board.
Yeah.
Right after.
Boom, boom. You can even play Bone Crusher Giant off of this.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. Talk about a combo.
Yeah, right? You can't play the other cards that we talked about, but you can play Bone Crusher Giant. But yeah, it's really worth having them, even so much that like...
And what I love about this card is I can pick the jankiest tribe, that I want.
Yeah, you can do...
And if I slam 4 copies of this into my deck, I have a good shot at winning.
You do. Absolutely. If you know when to play it and what to do.
I could play Merfolk, or
you could play
play red, white, green warriors, whatever.
Yeah. You can put in a pirates deck.
Yeah, I could play pirates. It's historic. I could play pirates. That's like 4 color Grixis plus green pirates.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Just like whitelist pirates. That's funny.
Anyways, that's the start of our historic
our list. You
list.
can keep up to date with this list if you listen to our podcast / look at our website that we're going to have at some point.
Coming soon.
Yeah, whenever Jeff figures it out.
I'm working on it.
But yeah, so that is going to be a work in progress. We're going to keep up to date with that and make sure that you know which cards are worth crafting, or just it's just fun. It's just for fun. Everything's for fun. That's what this game is.
This game's fun.
That's what games are. If you didn't know.
All right. So we wanted to end the podcast by quickly just talking about, well, there were key bans last week.
There were a lot.
Was it 2 weeks ago?
It was last week.
Last week we talked about the bans.
Last week we talked about the bans.
And so they must have been on Monday.
Was it on Monday? I think it was.
So what have we been seeing on the ladder? What kind of decks can we expect to see?
I mean, like, it is important to know that Jeff plays a lot of best of 3, I believe. And
I play in constructed, always best of 3.
Okay, and I play a lot of best of 1.
Right. That means we're seeing both sides, both metagames.
We're playing, we're seeing a lot of different decks.
Right.
So when I talk about a deck, it could be easily Jeff's like, I've never seen anyone play that.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. That you're not running into like best of 3 being like, okay, I'm going to see all these decks, super aggressive, all this stuff. It's like, no, that's because we were playing best of 1. They're playing aggressive
there's
decks.
A lot of overlap, but there are a few sort of
there are a few corner cases that are different. But I will say, last week we were talking about Dimir Rogues. Are they going to be Seth Manfield's version of Dimir Rogues? I have seen many, many Seth Manfield Dimir Rogues decks.
And even the decks I've played against that weren't Seth Manfield's exact list, because they had some differences in cards. They took his philosophy, which is that you're trying to make Drown in the Loch and Into the Story as good as possible.
Absolutely. Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think that I've probably seen pre-ban, or sorry, not pre-ban. Let's go back. Pre-grand finals. I saw Zareth a lot. I used to see Zareth
that used to be the reason to play Rogues. People.
Post the grand finals in Seth Manfield, I've seen one Zareth probably, and everything else looks almost exactly like his list. They might play a Night Hawk or something, but
I've seen like a Lurrus and Ruin Crab version.
So they'll play Ruin Crab and stuff. But as soon as you see Lurrus, and then there's like somebody plays like a Dimir land, you're like, it's pretty close that you're gonna
at least in spirit it sets less.
It's in spirit, that's kind of
they're
where
trying to press you a bit, but they're mostly trying to turn on these totally busted cards.
Absolutely. So that was something I had predicted, and it did come to fruition in my mind. Not as many as I thought I was going to see, there has been a lot of other decks popping up.
Yeah, I
which has
expected
been-
to see rogues everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway. I
Well,
don't
first
play
of all,
against it that
while we're
often.
talking about this, like, the standard format has just blossomed.
I agree.
It is doing quite well.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I want standard to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about the different decks that we see, but there's so many decks we have to talk about here. We won't get to talk about all of them. So
Yeah, but we can just run through a list real quick.
yeah,
As far as best of one, I'll probably just go first. I see a lot of Rakdos discard. There's just like hand disruption, Rakdos. You're playing Kroxa and different things where you're reanimating things from the yard and making things big.
that's in best of 3 as well.
Yeah, Yorion. Just any deck that wants to play Yorion is playing Yorion.
Right.
It's like all over the place. So many flicker
Green, white,
things.
blue, white, black.
Yeah, there's a lot of Esper stuff. Like
We should talk about Yorion a little bit.
It is. I was seeing the combo of it's like you have Yorion and then you have Charming Prince.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, that and then what's that wizard from M21 that when it enters the battlefield bounces a creature?
Oh, Baron.
Baron, yes. So Baron, and then the black enchantment, the treacherous
Blessing.
Yeah, blessing. Those cards, you're just flickering those.
Yeah.
Over and over again. It's so busted, and you're just like you have to scoop because they're just drawing so many cards and bouncing everything.
There's 1,000 different Yorion decks.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen green white. I've seen Esper blue white black.
Yeah.
I've seen just blue white. I've seen white black.
Yeah.
And then I've seen 80 card versions that play it as a companion, and 60 card versions that just play for
in the deck.
Yorion in the deck. I think eventually people will figure out which one's best, and you'll just see kind of a couple different Yorion decks. But right now, there's a ton of them.
There's a ton.
They all kind of have the same thing in common, that they spend the early turns setting up, and then once they get their Yorion loops gone, you just can't beat them.
You can't. You
There's just
really
too
can't
much
do anything.
value coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I find playing against Yorion decks a lot of fun. So I'm really enjoying the fact that there's just so many Yorion decks.
I was actually really frustrated because I played a Yorion against a Yorion deck, and I purposely attacked in a way that they had to block with their Thassa's Oracle that they played on turn 2, and they were just flickering it over and over to keep scrying, but to keep, and it was going to be their win condition. And I went to stomp it, but because of the way that the cards were blocked, they flipped directions. And so when I clicked the creature that was Thassa to Thassa's Oracle to be stomped, after damage was dealt, they flipped back to their original positions, and I clicked the wrong creature and I ended up losing.
So that's the thing that doesn't really happen to me anymore, but I remember it happening a lot. So I wonder if that's an arena Mac version. I still working out the kinks thing.
Well, because when you block certain things or things happen, like they'll move the creatures around. They don't always stay in the same
Maybe
places.
I'm just like used to it.
I think I was playing too fast and I needed to like slow down. Yeah. And I really know that was my misclick. I definitely killed the wrong creature because of it. So, play slower. But anyway, Yorion, that's the thing. Flickering stuff. I have seen Mardu and Boros Knights that you have not seen.
No, so that's a best of one only.
That's definitely a best of one thing. You will run into it. It's kind of like a Knights equipment thing.
Does it play Nahiri in the Mardu version, I guess?
I haven't seen Nahiri, honestly. Okay. It's not as equipment heavy. It's really just go Knights.
Yeah, that was a deck from Standards past. Yeah. So I'm not too surprised to hear
that it's coming back and they're trying
it. Has a resurgence, and it would do better in best of one than best of 3 for sure.
Golgari Adventure, I've seen a little bit of. I feel like you had heard about more of it.
So I wrote in the show notes. Apparently, Golgari Adventures is popular, but I haven't actually run into it myself.
So I have, I've seen it a couple times. It hasn't been something that I was really worried about, but I have seen it. And then Gruul, lots of Gruul. I'm playing Gruul mainly. And a couple other random brews that I have that are pushing me down the ladder. I have not been doing as well with the Gruul Adventures deck as I was previously, so I'm looking to change some things up. Yeah, but that's.
I mean, in episode 1, we kind of predicted Gruul was the best deck.
Yeah, and it seems like there are a lot of decks purposely.
We might have been wrong on that one, man. I don't run into Gruul almost ever in best of 3.
I think that I played a lot. I've seen it, but I've been getting beaten up pretty bad. So either people saw it and knew how to shoot it or what. But yeah, it's different. But best of 3, what have you been seeing?
So there's a really cool mono green food deck that's kind of going around. It has obviously Gilded Goose.
Yeah.
Then it has the Wicked Wolf, which fights something
when
and
it comes into play.
Eat a food to make itself indestructible.
It's
but the
4/4,
cool,
yeah.
Well, it's a 3/3, but when it eats the food, it goes up to 4/4.
Right.
Yeah, it puts a counter on it. But the cool part about this deck is a card that I've always wanted to be good, and maybe is good now without the bans. Feasting Troll King. It's just 2 green.
Yeah.
For what is it, like a 7/6 vigilance?
Yeah.
If you played it from your hand, you make 3 foods, and then if it's ever in your graveyard, you can sack 3 foods to bring it back to the battlefield.
And so it just like keeps coming back.
Yeah, and this is kind of their all-star 7/6 trample vigilance.
Yeah.
I don't know why it has vigilance, but whatever.
It makes it awesome.
Yeah. And Trail of Crumbs is their value engine. It's a really good deck. I've run into it a couple of times. I was impressed both times with what they were doing on the other side of the battlefield.
That's cool. I like that.
Then I noticed mono red. I mean, mono red's always...
It's always a deck, or at least people are pushing for it.
On the arena ladder, you will always run into mono red.
Yeah.
Especially with Embercleave in the format.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're going to lose to it on turn 4.
Probably
when
most of the
they
time.
go 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop Embercleave. But there's also a kind of big red version. So it's not trying to aggro you out. It goes a little bigger. It plays the Chandra from M21. And then discards cards like Ox of Agonas, builds its graveyard and does and then Phoenix of Ash to do the escape thing.
Yeah.
It's a very cool deck. Not sure how good it is. I've seen it around, but I tend to beat it. So... But I thought it was a cool deck worth mentioning. Then you see a lot of blue-black based control decks. They're either blue-black or blue-black-red, depending on what they're doing. They're good, yeah. I mean, blue-black was a bit of a thing before. Basically, you're playing a lot of the same cards rogues are playing. You're just not playing rogues.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm running into in best of 3.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I think there are that is even just like a small sample size of what people are playing.
Oh,
There's
for
so
sure.
much going on in
there's even
Standard
more
right
than
now.
that. Yeah.
It's all over the place. Like I really think Standard is in a very healthy place right now.
Right.
If you listen to people that say it's not, I think that they just have only played one deck and don't even try other ones. So
send them our way.
Yeah. So yeah, they can listen to us and we'll tell them a bunch of different things they could play.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's been good. I really like post-ban Standard. So much so that I haven't really been playing Historic, which I was almost specifically only playing Historic before this. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about Arena. You can kind of bounce back and forth between the 2 formats.
Yeah. When you're like, I'll just do something else for a little bit. It will get a little confusing when you're like, oh, they have this card. You're like, wait, no, that's not even in Standard.
Yeah. They can't have that.
So
I don't need to worry about getting Thoughtseize.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, but Zach, they don't have to take our word for it, right?
No.
I mean, we're just seeing random shit on the ladder.
We are absolutely just seeing random shit online.
And we're just kind of reporting it here.
Yeah.
You know?
But there was a tournament recently, right? Or at least a showdown.
Yeah, so there's the Channel Fireball Pro Showdown over the weekend.
Yeah.
And this is a tournament that, it's not the most competitive thing in the world, but there's money on the line. There's, I think, $1,000 in prizes.
Yeah, something like that.
And if you get to beat the grand boss, it doubles.
Yeah, they have like a boss system where like the person who wins the tournament gets to fight the boss.
Right.
And that's like some pro player or
some Channel Fireball
Channel
Pro.
Fireball
In this case,
Pro.
it was Louis Scott Vargas.
Yes.
And there were 277 entrants, so it's a real event.
Yeah, that's good.
And the top 8 looked really diverse. I mean, it was won by Andre Strasky, who was playing green-white Yorion. Then the top 8 was, after that, Mono Red, Blue Black Control, Naya Ramp, which is a deck
Interesting.
neither of us have seen.
Huh.
Then Jeskai Control. Again, that would be Blue White Red.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen that. Then there's Blue Black White Yorion in 6th place. And then the bottom 2, 7th and 8th, were Gruul Adventures.
Hey, which we had talked about it.
We weren't totally wrong.
Yeah.
But that's a great top 8. I mean,
That's a
the
good top
only
8.
deck to double up were 7th and 8th.
That is
Hallowed
so much
Adventures.
better than the top 8 that we saw from the grand finals.
No kidding.
That's
right?
playing like the same. Everyone's playing basically the
7
same cards.
Adventures deck.
Yeah,
And Seth.
and Seth.
Yeah. So Andre Strasky won. He did not defeat the final boss.
No.
Luis Scott Vargas won. And Luis was playing blue-white Yorion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was a Yorion mirror match, green-white versus blue-white. And Luis managed to win. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into the results of this event.
Yeah,
Especially because, Andre Strasky is a Magic Pro League player,
Mhm.
one of the best players in the world. The fact that he won doesn't mean that green-white Yorion is the best deck.
yeah,
But it does show that there's a lot of different options
exactly. And there's a lot of different.
that you can have success with.
Yeah, of course, which is great, and it's really nice to see. That looks healthy to me. I see
Right.
the stats. I didn't actually get to watch a lot of this tournament, but being able to like go over the top 8, which is usually what I'm doing with tournaments, I don't get to watch,
Yeah.
or even ones I do watch. But seeing what made it is really nice to see a bunch of different stuff in there. It just gives hope for like any deck you're brewing. Like you got a shot.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that kind of wraps it up for this episode number 2.
2.
Yeah. So
We made it.
We made it. We did another one. Hey, look at us. I want to just give a shout out to our one listener out there. Hey, thanks. You know who you are.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
thank you. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Arena Regulars. Just ask us any questions or give us feedback about anything. Or
And hey, if you ever see or get to play against Arena Regulars podcast
on
on
Arena.
MTG Arena,
Yeah.
give us a good emote.
Yeah.
Give us a nice if we thought sees the right card.
Yeah, give us a nice if we thought this is the right card. Yeah, that'd be great. Or just anything. I mean, that account is basically going to be like a free-to-play account. So we'll
Yep.
do what we...
Other than maybe the
Okay.
$5 welcome.
yeah, we'll probably do $5 welcome and craft all our thought seizes so you can give us a nice.
That's right. That's all we're looking
That's
for.
really that's all we want. We're playing mono black nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wraps it up. So we'll see you next time. Good night.
Good night.
All right, that's fine.